Hello and welcome to the Bootleg Universe Pitch Show. I am Sam Lasky and I am joined by...
Ken Clark.
Way to be on the ball, Ken.
Yeah. Ken Clark, thank you.
Very good. All right. And
Graham Hughes, also thank you.
Okay. And today, as we've been doing with these pitch shows, we are bringing our takes on some of our favorite IP and classic characters. Today, Ken and I have a project that we've been working on for a while that, if you've seen some of our other episodes, you know is about one of our very favorite characters, Mr. Bond, James Bond.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've always wanted to do like a classic James Bond movie set in the 1960s in that great Sean Connery era, really bringing it back to its roots. But we wanted to do it in the bootleg animation mixed media format. So we open in the battlefields of World War II over Nazi-occupied France. As this battle is raging on, there's a Nazi Zeppelin going through the sky. And suddenly two figures paraglide toward the Zeppelin on a secret mission. Number one is OSS agent James Bond, back during his early Navy career during World War II. The second is another person who famously served in World War II, Elizabeth Windsor. Princess Elizabeth Windsor of House Mountbatten. Yes, that's right. Princess Elizabeth Windsor is not just repairing jeeps in the fields of England during World War II. She has enlisted as a secret agent, as all members of her family have, dating back to the Holy Roman Empire, in a backstory that we won't go into, but they've long been action heroes that we just didn't know about. They swoop in and paraglide onto this Nazi Zeppelin, take out the Count Baron von Riffenhaven, and steal the secret Nazi technology that they're after. After they are stranded in the cold winter fields of France, they come upon a barn to take shelter through the night.
I wonder what'll happen there.
Princess Elizabeth is freezing her precious royal butt off in this barn. And the only thing that is going to keep her warm through the night is the sweet, manly body heat of one James Bond. Now, James Bond has sworn to protect His Majesty, King George the whatever. And in protecting His Majesty, he has to protect the princess. So what is he going to do? Refuse an order? Let the princess freeze to death? No. They take off their clothes and they roll around in the hay, and some things happen that I'm not going to talk about because I want to be respectful of a woman who recently passed away. I don't want to do anything that would be considered problematic.
Yeah, we're short of that already by now.
But suffice it to say that James Bond and Princess Elizabeth have an affair while they're both OSS agents during World War II. Flash forward to the 1960s. She is now Queen Elizabeth II. She is in an unhappy, unfulfilled marriage with Prince Philip. We've all seen The Crown. I'm not speaking out of turn here. And she's driving with her corgis through the hills of Scotland in her Jeep like you do. She's shaking off her tail because she needs to get away. And a plane swoops down low and magnetizes her Jeep and pulls her into the sky. Queen Elizabeth has been kidnapped.
Classic magnet plane ploy.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, who does MI6 send to rescue the Queen but the best? The best. James, her former lover, James Bond. God save the Queen.
Nice. Cue some awesome...
Yeah. We're not just doing a 1960s James Bond movie. We have to make it a bootleg universe project, which means how are we going to bring in our particular style, our low-budget filmmaking style with animation, mixed media? Well, the villain of this movie, classic Bond villain, will be based on Andy Warhol.
Nice.
Pop artist extraordinaire, filmmaker Andy Warhol, and his henchmen, of course, will be the superstars in his factory: Edie Sedgwick, Joe, whatever, D'Alessandro, all the classic guys. Candy Darling from the superstars from the factory. And what is his nefarious plan in kidnapping the Queen? Well, he is also taking control of a British spy satellite and is beaming down what he calls the deconstruction ray onto the world, which is literally artistically deconstructing reality for everyone in the world. Suddenly, the world becomes mixed media. It becomes animation. It becomes claymation. It becomes all the crazy things. It looks like Andy Warhol screen prints. It looks like sculptures. It looks like all the different types of modern art mixed together. And he tells the British government that if they try to take back their satellite, he will, of course, kill the Queen. So James Bond has to rescue the Queen and then destroy this satellite in order to keep the entire world from literally going mad from witnessing too much pop art.
Relatable.
Now we're gonna be globe-trotting. We have a great train fight sequence. We've got an underwater base.
Battle.
We've got an underwater base with where the Andy Warhol character is dropping henchmen through a trap door to be eaten by a giant squid.
I have one requirement.
Yeah.
We need to go to space
We
again.
have the Moonraker space station.
Yes, we have classic Bond torture scene.
Yes, we do a torture scene where he turns the deconstruction ray all the way to the other side where things become too real. Suddenly we're in 120 frame per second 4K digital video. It looks like when we all went to see The Hobbit opening weekend in high frame rate 3D, and it was like, oh, what is this? So Ken and I have actually written this script. We've got the storyboards, and we would obviously love to do it as a James Bond film, but we know full well that Eon Productions, Barbara Broccoli is not going to surrender.
Right, to claymation. to having a
us
claymation
lunatics.
James Bond.
Be completely unaffiliated Bames John.
Well, the name is Alabaster Steel.
Alabaster
that's
Steel,
better.
yeah.
So yeah, and
evocative.
we're innovating some really cool things, I think, with this project. The aforementioned train sequence. Obviously, you have to have a train sequence because train fight sequences are the best. But we want to do this sequence in one. It's going to look like one shot where we pass through a doorway and suddenly the format changes, or Alabaster Steel, James Bond gets thrown through a window, and we pan through the window with him, and as his body is passing through the window, it switches from 2D animation to claymation,
Almost
all in
like
one motion.
in some ways like a oneer, a multimedia
Exactly.
oneer action sequence, something that I don't think
sick.
anybody's ever attempted or done before. So
Yeah, and we go into outer space, and they shut down the gravity, and so we're floating through the space station. The camera's floating, and again we're in claymation inside. Then we pass out through the window of the space station. Suddenly we see model spaceships flying around and shooting each other.
Dangling on strings.
There's so much I want to talk about with this project because I'm in love with the script. Obviously, I mean,
it's
I'm in
phenomenally
love with my writing.
It's phenomenally well written. So.
But the stuff where we want to do with this, I don't think anybody's done before, and I think it's going to be really, really cool.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some turns. Like there's even like this 5-minute Studio Ghibli style like sequence where we just go off and follow two random characters on a side story that doesn't connect back for 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, that's one of the best parts of the script.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. And one of the things, obviously, the concept of Bond, as we've spent hours discussing before, is one of the most probably seminal ideas of the 20th century in terms of fiction. It's been replicated in so many formats by so many people, and its own thing, and any spy film or anything like that comes along, with only a few exceptions, kind of get compared to a Bond-esque type of thing. What really obviously sets this apart, other than the great script, is the fact that it just is embracing a multimedia concept, and that's what the bootleg universe really allows. And what's so cool too is how well in the screenplay you integrate the actual idea of switching multimedia into the narrative.
Yeah.
So it actually very much narratively makes sense within the story.
It's all a part of this Bond villain's, Andy Warhol's master plan of like deconstructing reality, forcing the world to see itself through this prism of art so that the world can evolve into its next phase. And, we've talked about in our Bondversations episodes, go watch them if you haven't.
If they're online yet.
Yeah, if they're online yet. That, the whole idea of James Bond, really part of the appeal is he's a creature out of time. The first Bond movies didn't come out. Ian Fleming was writing during sort of the dissolution of the British Empire. And the movies didn't come out until, after India had achieved independence, Kenya, South Africa, all these, Egypt, the Suez Crisis had just happened. There was this sense that England was losing its place as this superpower, as this empire, which in fact it was.
Right.
It's a downward trajectory that obviously continues to this day. Very sorry for what y'all are going through in England right now. Have you settled on a prime minister yet? We're recording this in the past. Is your company still in flames right now?
Sam even threw a y'all
topical.
into there. That's just an insult to injury.
But
we're so relevant to the times.
But so the whole idea of Bond is that he is holding on to this Britain that is ceasing to exist, this traditional Britain that is protecting Her Majesty's empire. And it is the Bond movies are a fantasy of a world where Britain is still the most powerful superpower, and America and Felix Leiter are just some dumb yokels who sometimes are along for the ride. And I think it's interesting to contrast, literally a story with Bond and the Queen of England, these symbols of British Empire and tradition, with, the ultimate symbol of modernism, like Andy Warhol, and the way that art and culture and society changed so radically in this time in the 60s and the 70s. And so, I hope that by bringing in this mixed pop art style and trying to organically root it in the story that we're telling, it's going to comment on a franchise that we love in some really interesting ways.
Yes, it definitely, like you're saying, it's kind of represents these ideas of the vestiges of power, that people have known in this world for centuries, and kind of what that means brushing up against, the modern world or the modern sensibilities in a sense. But also just the definition of art in a weird way, because I think, the traditional format of art would be paintings and portraits and very much kind of a structured approach. And Andy Warhol was somebody who was kind of flipping that on its head in a weird way of like, what do we find meaning in? And is it even something as simple as just, reconfiguring the image, not necessarily, creating something from scratch, reconfiguring it, or taking something obviously as famous as the Campbell's soup can and creating a piece of art out of that. And what does that mean? So yes, the conflict, thematically is so kind of rich and cool in the idea, and then layer that now, put that inside of a Bond film.
Yeah. And I think that, looking back on Warhol and his work, however many decades hence, I think there's a lot of like, oh, it's a fucking soup can, but what is this? Right. But, people were literally outraged. Like, how dare you hang a screen print of a soup can in an art gallery, in a museum? What? This is an affront to our culture and tradition. And like, that outrage is what I would think would be provoked by him literally forcing all the people of the world, especially the royalty of England, forcing them to look at the world through a pop art lens.
Yes. This will be his greatest art installation ever, the world.
And there's God, I want to talk more about this, but there's a pretty big twist that I won't spoil.
Yes, there is some really good twists, I think. I think there's, you do a very good job of peeling back layers in the concept as it's going along.
And who the real villains are.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising.
I have a question. Can Andy Warhol be a Bond villain if he's not disfigured? Or is the hair enough?
So I was actually thinking of visually making him like a combo of Andy Warhol and Salvador Dali, which also gives us a little bit more to play with in terms of the art style. So making him look like Andy Warhol with the hairdo, but also having the Dali mustache. But that is an interesting question. Should we give him a physical disfigurement of some kind?
I think
we
give
give
him the Van Gogh ear.
We have a secondary villain who's the Baron that they steal.
Who definitely is disfigued in the opening of the.
We disfigure him in the opening. They blow up the Zeppelin and he's all burned, and then you see him later on.
But as long as he's in there somewhere.
Yes, but even this concept itself is playing on what your expectations of Bond are.
Yeah.
And so, there is definitely the disfigured villain, but it kind of goes even farther than that.
We have the disfigured villain, and we have the crazy underwater layer and the outer space layer, and then we get to what are the real villainous undercurrents in a society, and what actually how should this franchise that we love, that we've talked about in our Bondversations episodes, that we've talked about, how can this move forward? What does it look like? What does it mean? I think this is through the story that we're telling, it's going to reveal how we think this franchise can evolve.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Bootleg Universe Pitch Show. We will be back soon with more exciting pitches from Bootleg crew discussing what we do with some of our favorite IP.